This is Euronews Now. I'm Helena Humphrey. Here are your top stories. Russia rejects calls to demilitarize the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant after the UN calls for an urgent end of military activity to prevent a potential disaster. Serbia and Kosovo fail to reach an agreement on easing tensions between the two countries at talks mediated by the EU foreign policy chief. And Finland's Prime Minister says she has taken a drugs test after video emerged showing her partying with friends. Sanna Marin vowed she'd never used illegal drugs.
Russia has rejected UN calls for a demilitarized zone around the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, which has been in the hands of Russian troops since early March. Moscow and Kiev have accused each other of shelling the site, which Moscow insists it must protect. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has called on Russia to withdraw its forces amid fears of a potential nuclear disaster. A delegation from the International Atomic Energy Agency is set to visit the site in September, but Moscow says that many details of the operation are yet to be arranged.
It's too early to say anything about details. These are all very sensitive issues. We're now discussing and will continue to discuss the details of the mission, the route, the number of people to be involved, how long they'll stay at the plant, and for what tasks they're sent there for.
NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg said on Wednesday that the UN's atomic watchdog must be allowed to inspect the plant as a matter of urgency, emphasising that Russia's occupancy of the site increases the risk of nuclear accident. The plant is the largest of its kind in Europe, and as the battle lines creep closer, many fear a nuclear disaster similar to that of Chernobyl in 1986.
As tensions rise between Serbia and Kosovo, the European Union has been trying to play mediator, but to no avail. A meeting yesterday between EU Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell and leaders from the two nations ended without reaching an agreement. Borrell says it's important for the two nations to normalise their relations, particularly given the current context.
And this happened at the moment when we are in a critical time for Europe. We see the return of war to our continent after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We are facing a dramatic and very dangerous moment for our continent. And this is not a moment for increasing tensions. It is time for looking for solutions.
Before meeting with Borrell, the two leaders met separately with NATO leader Jens Stoltenberg. The latest tension follows Kosovo's decision that Serbian identity documents and vehicle license plates would no longer be valid in its territory. Belgrade has been implementing the same measures for people from Kosovo crossing into Serbia for years, saying accepting them would amount to recognizing its neighbor as an independent state. Serbia still refuses to recognize Kosovo's independence declared in 2008.
Finland's Prime Minister Sanna Marin says she has taken a drug test after a video emerged of her at a party with friends. She was pictured at a private residence, Finnish singer Alma, a member of parliament and other celebrities. Opposition leaders demanded that the 36-year-old took a test, saying a shadow of doubt had been casted over the leader.
I have nothing to hide. I have not used drugs, so it's not a problem for me to take a drug test either. But I find it quite extraordinary that this has been demanded. I have seen no evidence of any drug use anywhere. It is not a problem for me to take a drug test.
The Prime Minister says the test results will be available in 1 week. Last year, she apologised for visiting a bar after coming into contact with someone who had coronavirus. She was criticised but ultimately not found to have broken any rules.
Italy's Foreign Minister Luigi Di Maio has accused former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev of interfering in the country's upcoming general election. The outgoing government, led by Mario Draghi, has fully backed Western sanctions against Moscow for its invasion of Ukraine. On social media platform Telegram, Medvedev urged Europeans to punish their governments at the polls for what he described as their evident stupidity and repeated threats to cut off Russian gas supplies to the continent. Enrico Letta, leader of the centre-left Democratic Party, also hit out at the post, describing it as a serious case of interference. Leader of the populist Lega Nord party, Matteo Salvini, stopped short of condemning the remarks, saying that he's not interested in making controversy with the rest of the world. Medvedev has openly taken pleasure from the recent political turmoil in the UK and in Italy, which brought about the end to the leadership of Boris Johnson and Mario Draghi, two of Ukraine's most staunch supporters.
The longtime financial chief of Donald Trump's company has pleaded guilty to fraud and tax evasion charges. Alan Weisselberg had been charged with hiding millions of euros in off-the-books income and will likely be sentenced to prison time. Now, it comes amid a backdrop of legal worries for the former US president after the FBI seized classified documents from his Mar-a-Lago home. Well, joining us now is Scott Lucas, Emeritus Professor of US Politics at the University of Birmingham in the UK. Scott, great to have you with us. Donald Trump faces myriad legal issues, really, doesn't he? There's worries when it comes to his personal business, concerns about his treatment of classified data, and also his efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 election. So, of those three thorns in his side, which thorn looks to be the thorniest, I guess?
All of them. Sorry to be a bit vague. We would need a half hour to detail all the legal charges. But here's how they intersect. First of all, the FBI raid actually opens itself up to three possible felony counts, which include prison sentences. So Trump likely violated the Presidential Records Act by taking documents without permission from the White House. But those documents were wanted as part of an investigation into the Capitol attack, which Trump is accused of inciting. And so now he faces obstruction of a government investigation charge. And then, of course, some of the documents were the top security classification that the government has, which makes him vulnerable to the Espionage Act. So you've got that one dimension. But then you mentioned the business practices. And there you have the New York State civil case, to which Trump has recently pleaded the Fifth Amendment for more than 4 hours, which is looking into fraud in his businesses. And that investigation may lead to the Manhattan District Attorney pursuing a criminal investigation of Trump's business. And of course, we know that yesterday, his chief financial officer, the man who was at his side for 40 years at the Trump Organization, Alan Weisselberg, pleaded guilty and will be testifying at a trial involving the Trump Organization in October. And then the third dimension, you mentioned the election. Well, here's the case to watch for. Down in Georgia, Trump and his allies are accused of trying to put in what's called fake electors, fake representatives, throwing out the legally elected representatives of Joe Biden.
Well, look, if you compare it to previous presidents, I mean, people used to call Bill Clinton Teflon Bill. I think Trump has taken that to a whole other level. But nevertheless, is there the sense now, and from what you're saying, that essentially he is running out of road here, do you think?
The 21st century is an ongoing contest, which is different from Richard Nixon or Bill Clinton, because of the extent of disinformation and how fast it spreads. So it's not as much Teflon, it's throwing mud. And what Trump has done since he ran for president in 2016 is that he's thrown mud, disinformation, whether it was over his connections with Russia, whether it was over his attempt to blackmail Ukraine to get Joe Biden out of the 2020 election, whether it was over his business and practices and fraud. And this contest will continue. Donald Trump, as soon as the FBI raided his house, in fact, within minutes, was on Truth Social, his media outlet, to say this was all the deep state, it was a witch hunt, it was a plot. And so what you have is, for all the legal analysis I can give you, is this battle for hearts and minds, where Trump is trying to seize them with falsehoods and deceptions and hoping that the truth never catches up with him.
Plenty more coming up after a short break. Do stay with us if you can.